In part 26 of the Vampire Survivors series, which I'm gonna go through today, we will be covering how to create coin pickups, and not just coin pickups, but also how to create a save system so that you retain the number of coins that you have from the last playthrough. Because in Vampire Survivors, right? So these coins are collected and they're saved. Every time you finish a game, they're saved. And so they're added to your overall stash. And that is retained and that is transferred across multiple play sessions. So we're gonna have to create a save system to support the coin pickups as well, because in the later part when we get there, we will be also creating a purchase system. Vampire Survivors also has a purchase system where you can purchase different kinds of buffs for your characters. So the save system, even though it's designed to only save coins in this part, it will be used in the future to save other things, like all the boosts that you have purchased for your characters and character unlocks and all that stuff. So let's get right into it. So in part 26, the first thing that we're gonna do, right, is to create a coin UI that displays the total number of coins that you have on the main menu screen, as well as a coin display to show the total number of coins that you have collected for that game itself. So the first thing we're gonna do is to grab a coin UI, a bunch of coin UI sprites. And so this sprite is edited from a bunch of resources that we found online. If I'm not wrong, we found them at OpenGameArt. So we'll have to go to the title screen, and the coin UI will be created there first. I'm gonna jump right into art folder. And from here, I can import the asset that I just downloaded, which is this. So one thing that you have to note about this asset is, again, this is assembled from a couple of different resources, and the reason why we combine everything into one sprite is because this makes everything more efficient. You know, when you load everything from one sprite sheet, it's generally more efficient than having multiple files, multiple sprites across multiple files. That makes the loading time longer. So because everything is in a sprite sheet, I have to set a sprite mode here to multiple. You should be pretty familiar with this, given that you have followed 25 parts of this tutorial prior. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster with the basic things for the management of the sprites. So I'm just gonna slice everything by automatic so I can get all these different sprites separately. I'm also gonna 9 slice. 9 slice means you drag out the little dot over here. I'm gonna show you what a 9 slicing does for us later on, right? So did I just adjust this wrongly? So when you 9 slice, make sure that the green line comes out and it's not the blue line that follows. Just one thing to take note of. So what 9 slicing does for us, right, is that, okay, I'm just gonna go to the canvas right here. And from here, I am going to just drop the coin UI right at the bottom of the screen. I think the screen here is a little bit small, so it's a little harder to do that. You can just move the instructions button a little bit higher, perhaps. And then we can, oh, the buttons is not very responsive yet. Okay, so from here, I'm just gonna add an image, and I'm just gonna anchor the image at the bottom of the screen and drop this box over here. So what is the purpose of 9 slicing our sprites? If you notice, when you scale the box sprite that we have here, right, it doesn't scale evenly, which is not very nice for a button. So we want this little black box over here to be adaptive to all kinds of sizes. So when I 9 slice the sprite, you will be able to actually select the slice option over here, and this will actually make the borders grow evenly as opposed to growing proportionate to how the scaling is. You can increase the size of the border by reducing the size of this multiplier unit. So let's say if you want the border to be more obvious, you can reduce this to a very small number. And you will see the border, no matter how you scale, it always scales together with your scaling. So the 9 slicing here is really important. And don't forget also to set the filter mode here to bilinear so that you don't get blurring on the sprite, which is what we don't want. So I'm gonna call this the UiCoinDisplay, and it's gonna be filed under the canvas. I'm gonna anchor it to the bottom of the screen, but just as we have done for our previous UI elements, right, I'm going to be setting the anchors manually like this. We can play around with a couple of values until we arrive at one that works for us. And what I also want to do is just set everything to 0, and then the y coordinates will be 0 and 0.1. Okay, so we have some height over here. It's a lot off center, I'm not sure why. Oh, it's 0.4 and 0.6, my bad. 0.45 and actually 0.55 may be better. So I'm just adjusting the anchor and then zeroing everything so that the anchors will determine where the element is. And this, if you have followed the previous videos, it's just to make everything responsive. Okay, the main menu is actually not responsive yet. We have a video that covers how to make it responsive if you want to look into that. Okay, but otherwise the box over here I want to make it responsive, which is why I split the anchor. And we can make the rest of these buttons responsive as well, and it's the same technique as I've done here. We have a video that covers that, so you can check it out in the link below as well later on after we publish the video. So I'm just gonna shift the values here around because 0.4, 0.5 maybe it's a little bit small. I'm gonna try 0.4 and 0.6 right here. Okay, so once we have gotten a number that we want, I'm just gonna have a little offset from the bottom. Just gonna play around with some values over here, right? Because I don't like the sizing of everything. I think it's very good thus far. I think this is great. So once I've gotten the sizing that I want, next thing I'm gonna do in the UiCoinDisplay is to add an image over here, and the image will be aligned to the left hand side. I'm just gonna stretch the image out like this, but I'm also gonna constrain the image to be only about 30% of the entire element. And from here, I am going to I'm gonna constrain this 30% of the screen right here. I'm gonna call this the icon. And from here, what I'm gonna do is to assign this image here. And you can play around again with the borders to kind of get a design that you want. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to strictly follow mine. I'm gonna set preserve aspect over here for the coin. And then this allows me to play around with the sizing of everything. Yeah, so I'm just gonna have it take up 30% of the screen right here. And finally, the last thing I'm gonna do is to add a coin text element. Okay, sorry, it's the wrong element. I'm supposed to use Text Mesh Pro. So I'm gonna call this coin text, and I'm going to stretch everything out, but then have the anchor take up 30% right here. Then I can set the left at 0. Same thing that we've done all the way the past few videos. It's been always the same thing. Okay, align this to the center. Let me just make sure my face doesn't cover. Align this to the center here. Make sure auto size here is checked, and then set the number here to 0. Later we'll use a script to set our coin count value. So again, if the 0 is too close, introduce a little bit of margin at the side. That will help to keep everything in the right place. Okay, so now that we have everything here, let's move on to one of our main scenes right here, the level 1 scene. I'm just gonna disable the level up screen, alright, because it's a little bit in the way. And what we're gonna do here is the same thing. We'll first add a new image. So over here, the format is gonna be a little bit different. If you refer to the Vampire Survivors UI, right, they have a coin icon top right hand corner like this. And again, I'm just gonna set some values right here so that the coin takes up a certain amount of space in the screen. And zero everything out here, preserve aspect, and then set a top margin of say 10. Push this in a little bit, and maybe 25, what, 30. So a lot of creating UI is just trial and error. You gotta find a value that you like, and you can just plant the object there. I like to set anchors and margins because this makes the whole thing responsive. Okay, look at this now. When I change the size of the element, this coin thing adapts itself. And of course, we have to also, let me just call this the UiCoinDisplay as well. And then of course, we will have to add a text element to the UiCoinDisplay right here. And this one is going to, I'm gonna set the X here to minus 1 and 0. And then this will be 0 and 1, like this. So what I'm aligning the text to do is basically I'm aligning the text to all the way here. I just gotta zero all the values here, and then you'll be able to see. I'm putting the text box over here. And maybe 1 is not big enough. I'm just gonna do a -2 instead, right? So that we can, text will flow all the way, like cover a big part of the screen over here. I'm gonna center align, right align it and middle align. And then we can auto size the text and set this to 0. So then now we have a coin counter. So the good thing about setting up the coin counter in such a way that text is a child of the icon, right, is that I get to resize the text. If, say, I think everything is too big, I can always just size this down and then the number goes down a bit, right? So this is something that, again, you can play around with a little bit. I'm playing around with it as well. And you will see I'm just tweaking everything until I get a value that I like. One more thing as well is to add a shadow component, which is going to be very helpful because the shadow component adds a shadow right here like this. And this will help us to make the icon stand out when the background is bright. Sorry, when the background blends. If for some reason this icon blends into the background, then we have a drop shadow here that will help us. Same thing for the text. I'm just going to do a shadow right here. And this will, not sure why the text component doesn't show the shadow very well, but perhaps it's because the background is dark. Okay, so now that everything is set up, right, next thing I want to do is to I'm just gonna move the coin display to the top like this, and I'm gonna prefab the canvas. And the reason for that is because in the past part, right, we actually created a couple of scenes, but we didn't prefab the canvas. So then whenever we modify the canvas, right, we will have to update every scene, and this is not ideal. I'm just gonna call this Hey Judy canvas. I'm gonna prefab it, and then we'll move to our other scenes over here. Say we have scene 2, right? Make sure to save your scene. Go to scene 2, and what we want to do is you'll see the canvas is actually not updated with our UI display. And this is not ideal because this makes it so that if we have a lot of levels in the future, right, whenever we update the UI, we're gonna have to update all our scenes. Because I don't want that, I'm gonna just replace this with prefab. And the easy way to do this is actually just to go into your prefab folder over here, click on alternate, and then drag the H3D canvas over the canvas. This replaces the old game object with the new one. And from here, we will have to, unfortunately, we have to reassign some of the elements that we have right here, like for example the experience bar. So we have to run through a couple of elements over here. First is the play element. It has to have the experience bar assigned. It has to have the level text assigned as well. We also have the play inventory, and then the play inventory has to have the inventory slots assigned here. And then we have the upgrade window that needs to be assigned as well. This is under the level up screen. Okay, then now we have to head on to the game manager. So the player has some assignments that we need to set. I think the collector is fine. Let me just check everything to see it's fine. And the next thing we have to do is let me check the main camera and make sure everything is fine here. Game manager here, have to assign this canvas. and then we have to assign the font here. Reference camera will be the main camera. Straightforward. We have to reassign the pause screen, result screen, level up screen. Under the result screen, we have the chosen character, which we have to reassign as well. Where is the game manager? There we go. Chosen character image, chosen character name, level reached. We have level reached display right here. This is all for the results screen, right? We've covered this in the previous part, one of the very early parts of our series. We have stopwatch display, and that's about it. So in the canvas itself, we have to reassign a couple of things as well. In the inventory section over here, we have to reassign the player inventory for both the weapons and the passive slots. And then we have, what else do we have? Upgrade options holder. For this one, nothing to assign here. I think we have something to assign for the pause screen, UI stat display, because you want the pause screen to display player stats. And I think that should be about all, if I haven't missed anything. So once everything is assigned, you want to just save and try to play the game on a separate scene. And if everything is going well, you should be able to get the scene to play. Alright, so now that we have the coin UI set up, right, next thing we want to do, right, is to actually, before we write a script, so the next thing to do is to write a script for the coin UI. But before we write the script for the coin UI, we have to set up the infrastructure or the system that supports the retrieval and the saving of our coins. And for that, we will have to create a new script and call it the SaveManager. So let me just run through what the SaveManager script does for us. I'm just gonna delete the level select folder right here because it's not used. I'm just gonna put the SaveManager on the root scripts folder first. And then we will find a place to place it some other time. I'm just gonna very quickly but very briefly run through what the SaveManager does. Right, the SaveManager mainly has two functions. Maybe I'll just use the blog over here. SaveManager mainly has two functions: the save function here and the load function. So it's of particular interest, right, for us to see how the save function works. And the save and the load function both work by using something called game data. And game data is defined inside the SaveManager class. And what the game data has is basically all the data that the game has to save. So for now, the game only has to save the number of coins that we have. So we can just leave it with one variable. But in the future, when we have more things, like for example, we have things like, let's say, number of deaths, or things like, for example, characters unlocked, and all of these things, right? Okay, for characters, you don't really save them using integer, but it's just to demonstrate this. So next time, when we want to save more things into our game data, we will add more variables as we need, and everything will be managed by the SaveManager. So the SaveManager has a couple of variables, but everything links back to the save and load. So let me just continue explaining this by explaining to you how the save function works. When you save, when you try and call SaveManager.cs, which is how you will save the game, later on when we use the other scripts, you will see this in action. It'll take either a game data or use an existing game data. And what it does is that when you save, it just checks if any data is passed. If there's no data that's passed, we will use this variable called last loaded game data, which is like it's a representation of what the currently loaded game data is. And whether we are using the data that the function caller gives, or whether we are using the last loaded game data, when we try and save, what it'll do is just it'll save all the data as a JSON file into the get save path. Alright, so when we do this, then the get save path is basically a path. It's save data.json, and it's in this folder called application.persistent.data.path, and this is basically the designated Unity save folder. So whenever you want to save anything in your game, Unity recommends that you use application.persistent.data.path as the place where you save your data into. And what we are doing is we're finding the folder of where Unity recommends us to store the data into, and then using SaveData.json. Alright, so this is the application persistent data path, and then this is the save file name. So the get save path is just a simple way for us to retrieve where we want to save our data. And because Vampire Survivors only has one save file, we don't have to have multiple save slots. So in this sense, the save manager that we have is pretty straightforward. Alright, so the load function does the opposite of that. The save function writes all the data into a file in the player's computer, and the load function does the previous. It loads the file from the save path, SaveData.json. So the load function here, it does the opposite of save file, where it converts the text inside the place that we saved our file into a last loaded game data, and then it returns the last loaded game data. And because the last loaded game data here is a static variable, right? It's also saved inside the entire SaveManager class. So whenever we want to retrieve a value, we'll just call load, and then from the load we will retrieve the coins. Okay, later on, I will show you how this works when we code the coin pickup, and we make some changes to the game manager as well. Okay, but the save manager is basically a way for us to save the number of coins that we have into a place inside one of our project folders. It's not exactly the project folder. Unity has a designated place to save all your games, and this save folder can later be ported into Steam as well. Steam has a save service, right? And then all of this stuff that we are doing here, if we ever get there, will be compatible with Steam's what do you call that? I think it's called Steamworks, right? Not wrong. Okay, so that's it for the Save Manager class. Alright, it's just a way for us to save and load data. We also have a couple of null checks inside our load function, right here and right here. And the reason that these two null checks exist is because we want to make sure that when the load function runs, right, there is no occasion where it'll return null. So in this case here, if the last loaded game data is null, and this is true, this returns null. And in this case here, it's possible for the last loaded game data to be null if the JSON file has any errors. So in both cases, we will want to prevent this from returning null. If last loaded game data for any reason is null, right, it's going to always fill up with a new game data object that's empty. And the reason for that is because if we don't do that in our save function, as well as inside our last loaded game data property, if we first check whether the last loaded game data is null before we use the data. So if it is null and after loading the game it is still null, right, this will give us null reference exceptions in our code, which is less than ideal, and it can be a cause of many errors. So this is the reason why we have these null checks in the code. And once we have the Save Manager class in place, right, the next thing we want to do is, before we arm the Save Manager, we will also want to grab or rather add changes to our player collector script. And the reason that we are adding changes to the player collector script is because we'll also be making a couple of changes to the player collector script to allow it to record the number of coins that the player has collected. And to this end, we of course have a new coins variable right here. We also have a delegate called onCoinCollected, and this delegates are basically containers where you can assign functions to. And later on in the UI element, we are going to be assigning actions to this onCoinCollected. So you can assign as many actions as you want to a delegate. They are basically functions that are empty, but then you can assign other functions to it. So let's say if you assign 3 functions to our onCoinCollected, whenever we trigger the onCoinCollected delegate, then these 3 functions will run. So the method of declaring a delegates basically work as both variables and declarations. So you will first have to declare a delegate, because our delegate is whenever the coin is collected, we are triggering the delegate. We will first define the delegate's method header right here, and then we will define a variable that is the type of this delegate that we have, and it's called onCoinCollector with a lowercase o. So in the start function as well, we set the coin to 0, and the reason for that is because every time you start a new game, the number of coins that you have gets reset to 0. So if your game functions differently, then you will have to change this line of code. We also have the getCoins variable, which gets the number of coins, allows other scripts to access the number of coins that we have, and the addCoins method. The addCoins method is interesting because not only does it add the number of coins, it also triggers the delegate. And you trigger delegate the same way that you trigger a function. You put a delegate's variable name and then you put brackets at the end. And later on, when we hook actions to this delegate, this will allow this delegate to do something. So right now this function doesn't do anything because our delegate is empty. Alright, later on our UiCoinDisplay script will assign something to this delegate and it will cause this delegate to do something. We also have a save coins to stash function, and this function here basically just saves the number of coins that we have, or rather adds the number of coins that we have to our save manager, and then it sets the coins back to 0, and then we call the save function from the save manager to record everything into our save data. And by doing this, we allow the player collector to collect coins, and also to update the UI. Later on, the delegate will allow us to link the player collector script to our UI element. And the reason that we are using the player collector to store these points of data, just the coins, to store the number of coins that we have, is because Vampire Survivors can be a multiplayer game, and if we allow the game manager, or we allow something that is global to control and to record the number of coins that we have, it'll be very difficult for us to turn this game into multiplayer in the future. And that is the reason why the player collector has been expanded to save the number of coins that the player has. So in the future, if we have multiple players, we will have multiple player collectors, and this will allow each player to store the number of coins that they have. So once all that is done, right, we'll be ready to add a new script, the last script that will get everything to work, and it's called we'll skip the coin pickup first because that's the last thing. Okay, the thing that will get our coin UI to work is the UiCoinDisplay script. And this script right here is, let me just put it inside the UI folder right here, UiCoinDisplay. The UiCoinDisplay script is a script that basically helps us to display the number of coins that the player has, or that the entire save file has. It depends on how you set up the component. So we have two variables in this UiCoinDisplay script. The first variable is display target, and this is basically the text element that this script will output the number of coins to. We also have a collector variable, and this collector variable is optional. If you assign it, it will cause the UiCoinDisplay to show the number of coins that the collector has. Whereas if you do not assign it, then this will show you the number of coins that the entire save file has. In the start function, we find a text element either in the component itself or in children of the component. So this makes it very flexible because we can attach this UiCoinDisplay component to any UI element, and it will try to find a suitable place to output its output. And well, the simplest way is just to assign it to a text element, but later on in the video I'll show you how to do that. The start function calls update display, and what this does is it just updates the number of coins. It updates the text element here with the number of coins that either the player or the game has, again depending on how it's set up. The update display function is pretty straightforward. It checks whether collector is assigned. If a collector is assigned, it will take the number of coins the collector has. If no collector is assigned, it will show you the number of coins that the entire game has. The most important part of this script would have to be the third line of the start function, because right here we assign, if the collector is not null, we will assign the update display function to the collector's onCoinCollector delegate. Now if you recall previously when we talked about the collector script, one of the changes that we made was to add a delegate onto the script, and this delegate allows us to assign functions to it. And what kinds of functions can be attached to onCoinCollected? Because onCoinCollected is a function that does not have any arguments, our UiCoinDisplay is perfect for it because we can assign the update display function onto the onCoinCollected function, and then this will cause update display to run whenever the onCoinCollected function is called inside the player collector. And when is this onCoinCollected delegate called? This is called whenever we add coins. So this is a roundabout way. It seems like a roundabout way, but it allows us to update the UI using onCoinCollected. This allows us to update the number of coins in UI whenever the onCoinCollected delegate is called, because this is called and then this goes to update display, and update display updates number of coins in the UI. If you're wondering why we chose to use delegates to set up the updating of the UI after the player collects a coin, well, the reason is very simple. If we chose to get the player collector to update the UiCoinDisplay directly, then we will have to, instead of putting a delegate here, we will have to put a UiCoinDisplay like this. And then from here, we'll have to replace the onCoinCollected here with UI.updateDisplay. This is another way to do it. It might be a simpler way at first glance, but there are a couple of restrictions to this, and the main restriction that we will have is that each player collector will not be able to be configured to display the coins on multiple elements, and this will be a drawback later on. Let's say if you want to display the player's coins on the result screen as well as on the UI. If you coded it this way where there are no delegates, it will not be possible for one player collector to display to multiple UiCoinDisplays, and that is the main reason why this delegates method of updating the UI was chosen over the much simpler way of just doing a direct variable. Because with a delegate, you can assign multiple actions to it, right? When you can assign multiple actions to it, this means that you can assign the update display function from multiple UiCoinDisplays onto the player collector, and then this allows the player collector to display its number of coins to multiple UiCoinDisplays. It's a little bit of well, the devil is in the details, right? And initially when I coded this, I actually used a variable to keep things simple. Then I realized that, well, there was this limitation, and that was why I changed it over to using delegates. I'm gonna head over to level 1 as well, and I'm just gonna add the same thing to the HUD canvas, but I'm gonna make sure to edit the prefab. I want this to apply to all my levels, right? We just updated all the levels with the new prefab, and I again want to go to UiCoinDisplay right here, and from here what I want to do is just to assign the player. Where is the player? Oh, the player is not here, so I can't do that here. So once I've updated this, I have to go to the HUD canvas right here and make sure to assign the player collector. Player collector is under here, sorry. Player collector inside here. So once I assign the player collector, when we code the coin pickup later, you will see when we collect the coins, then the coin display will update itself. And that will be the last thing, which is to create a coin pickup. So the coin pickup is an extension of the pickup script that we have created in a couple of parts prior. We revamped the pickup system, right? And then we had a new buff and debuff system as well. Okay, so on top of that, I'm just gonna create a new coin pickup, and this coin pickup will subclass the pickup class. Okay, if you recall the pickup class that we had, was responsible for adding health or experience for us, right? So you might be wondering why we are not expanding upon the pickup class. Why don't we just add the number of coins as a variable right here, and then just use that to track the number of coins, or rather use that to give number of coins to the player. And the reason for that is because the pickup class interacts with the player stats object. So player stats handles the experience and the health. So then when we pick up something, the experience goes to player stats. Health also goes to player stats. So if we were to combine both the scripts together, then we will also have to have a collector variable right here. And so because coins are unique to only coins are collected by the player collector, so I've decided to create a separate script for the coin pickups, and then this would of course give a number of coins, and then this coin, what it does is when it's picked up and it's destroyed, it will give the player the number of coins that we have assigned here. This is a pretty straightforward script, and with that we have everything in place. We just have to make sure to jump to all our different levels and assign the player collector to the HUD canvas so that we will have the coins displaying correctly. Again, I have to grab the collector variable here and put it inside. Okay, so if I were to go to any of our levels, right, the last thing we have to do, of course, is to grab some coin pickups, create some new coin pickup prefabs, and this is the simplest part of the tutorial. So just jump into the player right here, just drop some coins. Let me see where my coins are. Where are my coin sprites? Okay, I've got to file them in the art folder. Forgot about that. So I'm just gonna grab a coin right here. This coin will be in the foreground. Add a pickup to it. Coin pickup, of course, and just gonna increase the size of it by reducing the pixels per unit a little bit here. And then now this will be coin pickup. It needs a collider, right? I'm just gonna add a single collider here. And yeah, it has an animation for itself, which is pretty nice. And so it gives 1 coin, and let me just try this out and make sure that it works, right? And then I can prefab it. So the coin pickup here doesn't update the UI. Okay, one thing I forgot to do is we have to go to the collector as well, and also assign a coin display to the collector, otherwise the UI will not update. So it has to be a both ways thing, and the coins should update now. Right, so you gotta apply this to all the scenes, unfortunately. Perhaps there is a way for us to optimize this a little bit, but if there is, I will record a separate video for that. I'm in a rush now, I'm gonna wrap up this video very soon. So let me just grab this, put it here. And yeah, so the coins should be working in all the levels now. So I'm just gonna prefab the coin pickup. So this is the coin pickup, prefab this, and then we will unpack this because I want to create a couple of different kinds of pickups, right? So I also have the coin bag. So this one of them gives like 5 coins, and the other one gives like 10 or something, right? So the coin bag will be like this. Maybe I'll make it a bit bigger. And this will give 5 coins. So this will be coin bag pickup. Of course, you can create any number of pickups that you want. I'm just giving some examples right here. And then let me unpack this and big coin bag pickup. This will be the last one. This one, of course, should be this one. And I can make it even bigger. And we'll prefab the big. I'm just gonna call this instead of coin bag or big coin bag, I'm gonna call this coin bag big pickup. So that everything gets clustered together like this. And then now we have all our different pickups. So that's it for part 26. It's a little bit short because we want to set the coin system up so that in the next part when we do the treasure chest, we can add coins to the player as well. Because we were doing the treasure chest and then we realized that there was no way for us to track the number of coins that the player has, and that is why the decision to add the coin pickups here. And I collect the coins, right? The coin counter does increase, but the collider seems to be pushing the player. So just gotta make sure when you're creating your coins, of course once you follow our tutorial, that you you ensure that they are triggers, so then they don't push you around, you know. The last thing that you will need to do is to go over to your props folder in your project and make sure to add coins to whatever props you want to drop coins, because otherwise your coins will never be in the game. So there is that. So I'm just adding coins to one of the props right here. And of course, you also want to adjust the drop rate, right? So for example, if like the large coin has a much lesser chance of dropping, then you have to adjust this accordingly. And also remember to check the active checkbox for your props, because otherwise the props will not drop anything. Finally, you also want to, if you want any of your enemies to drop coins, you also have to head over to each of the enemies and then configure the coins respectively. So over here, all the enemies in our project have been configured to drop either gems or coins in different levels of probability. So remember to do that, and you should have coins working in your game, and you will be ready to move on to adding proper treasure chest functionality that you see in the next part.